City to order, and I invite everyone to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And so Janice, our roll call, please.
Commissioner Gebhardt,
Present.
Commissioner Paliti,
Present.
and Chairman Hoyska.
Present. And we have our two vacancies we are carrying forward. And do we have an approval of the March 11th agenda?
I move that we approve the March 11th agenda.
Do you want to swap those two items?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I do want to swap the items. Before we approve the agenda, we're going to move the item I2 under the workshop zoning map updates. We're going to move that up right after we approve our consent calendar. And we're also going to have our planning commissioner reports inserted in there as well as another swap on our published agenda today, just to make room for everything. But with that being said, that is how I would like to suggest we approve our agenda, please.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so we will go ahead and move from the agenda to the consent calendar for the, we have some minutes from last year that we need to approve the March, May, and June of 2024. I didn't see any corrections or anything.
Nor did I.
Okay,
I would move that we approve the consent calendar, which consists solely of minutes from March 12th, May 14th, and June 11th of last year.
Second.
and all in favor?
Yep.
Aye. Okay, and so at this point, if it's okay, with our city planner, I will go ahead and have Mark go ahead. You wanted to go ahead and do an intro of items unrelated to the agenda at this time. Yeah.
It is related, but
Okay, right, the workshop, yeah,
If it's related, let's just cover it under the
Okay.
workshop.
right.
under the workshop, okay.
I would
So-
just go to item G, which is public comment.
So we'll just move on, no presentations, public comment. This is the time for anyone in the audience that would like to have their 4 minutes. And we have Mr. Rhodes.
Yeah, I'd like to comment on, I read this paper about Sutter Creek, a proven gold rush. And
They
I
did
hate
not
to see
do
it's in phases. And the bad thing about it is there's no catch basins or nothing in it. And guess where the water comes in the drain? There ain't one catch basin or nothing mentioned in it. And that should be covered in there. And I think the phases, they don't know what they're talking about, because that's what we did, and that's where we went to umpteen amendments, changing everything. And one guy goes broke and the next one takes over and they change everything. That's a terrible way to go. Thank you.
Just to respond to that, they did a preliminary presentation of the proposed application, which hasn't been accepted by the city of Sutter Creek yet. Mr. Rhodes' comments are valid, and the city of Ione, once they proceed and do their CEQA, California Environmental Quality Act compliance and hold scoping, the city of Ione will definitely be paying attention to what's in there in terms of drainage. So we will pay attention.
Heeding that. Okay, no, good update.
May I ask, what kind of impacts would it have on Ione?
If he's talking about the drainage impacts to potentially to the Ione area, and we can definitely look at that. Also school impacts, because we have the junior high here. And there may be others, I don't know. But it's worth taking a look at just to see if we have any impacts and want to comment on the scoping during the environmental to make sure anything that would potentially is being reviewed.
But that's good to hear. I appreciate the clarification that it was just, it's, because I saw a blurb as well, but that it was just a preliminary presentation. So I appreciate that point of clarification. Okay, and with no further public comments, oh,
You guys are doing your workshop here, is everybody part of that, or is it you guys just talking about?
No, it's up to the chair, but usually in a workshop, public participation is encouraged.
yeah, yeah.
Oh.
We were going to accelerate and move that workshop and the zoning map updates into the very next item. And so hopefully we are able to have Susan take us away with that, the anticipated workshop update.
Gary, you missed public hearing stuff, so you have to sit there quietly. So the recommendation was to hold a public workshop to review the potential updates to the city's zoning map and provide direction to staff. And the reason I brought this is bringing this to the Planning Commission is that, we have a general plan that was updated in 2023 and we have the zoning. So your general plan is up here and it has the 7 mandated elements: land use, circulation, open space, conservation, safety, and noise. So you've got that there. And then in the land use section, it has the land use designations. So your 2023 general plan includes a general map that I believe Janice has given you all tonight. And then it has a drawn out area that's shows the downtown area a little bit better. And then it has several specific areas that are covered for policy for new development in the future. So Ringer Ranch isn't one of those, and the Q Ranch, and there are a couple others. So I started reviewing that map and then comparing it to your 2018 zoning map, which is the most up-to-date map that I could find. And then I had lots of people coming up to me and saying, this isn't working and that's not working. The first one that I need to address is the Reed property. So the Reed property is as you're going out past the prison, there's a little piece of property and you can see it on the map, on the zoning map. So it's this little piece right here. And it's showing that it's in the county. And it turns out this is incorrect on both your maps. It is in the city. So Mr. Reed, who owns this property now, went to the county and said, what can I do on this? And they're like, go ask the city. It's in the city. So everyone did a little research with the local agency formation commission, LAFCO, and it is in fact in the city. So but it doesn't have any zoning on this. This is the first one that I need some direction on what might be possible here. It's on the edge of the city. It's across the street is planned development, but if you look at the general plan and the zoning, it's pretty much proposed for residential of some sort. It could be a good one for a limited commercial or a transitional commercial, but that's something we need to discuss and get direction on how you want me to go through the process of applying a zone to this.
Could you point out one more time for me, please?
This is
Right in the corner. Okay, I
That
see.
little corner that's in the blue.
Collings Road, where that goes off.
Yeah, huh?
Mhm.
Right in here, I think that's what we're talking about. That's where the old Union Schoolhouse used to be.
Yes, yes.
And then, of course, that closed up a long time ago, and it belonged to the school district for a long time, and I guess they eventually sold it.
Yeah, I'm not sure the history of how it was acquired by Mr. Reed, but I need to get some direction as to what to look at for the zone. And anything that we're talking about here, this is a workshop.
Right.
You're not approving the zone
Right.
for that because that has to go through environmental review in accordance with the California Environmental Quality Act. It has to go through public noticing 10 days prior to the planning commission meeting. The planning commission has to make a recommendation to the city council because it's a quasi legislative amendment. And when we amend the zoning ordinance, or the zoning map, you also have to amend your general plan so that they're consistent. So it's a process we have to go through. I don't want to go down that process if I'm going to bring something to the planning commission that you're going, heck no, that's not what we envisioned for this area.
How big of a piece of property is it?
It's very small.
It's a little bit.
It's just that little bitty thing.
Give me a quarter acre, eighth acre?
About an acre.
An acre.
In the overall scope of thing, that's a pretty minor kind of a deal here.
Right, but it's
Something.
something I need to address. And as we do updates to the zoning map and the zoning code to be in conformance with the housing element, which we'll talk about in the next topic, now's the time to address these little, issues that they just need to be resolved. I believe when I talked to Mr. Reed, he was interested in some kind of a limited commercial, and he's potentially wanting to do another school type use out there. So, but I'd like this to be, the zoning to be, because there's nothing on it right now, to be driven by the city planning commission and the city council. So that's one to think about. The other one that's been brought to my attention is in your general plan designation map. Andrea Bonham's piece of property was during the 2023 update of the general plan was changed to transition, commercial transition. And that was never changed on this map that I can tell. So that's just a procedural thing that I wanted to bring to your attention because I've gotten a lot of people like concerned, but that will be coming when I package all these little zoning updates. That will be packaged into that.
With that being said, could I do my little thing right here?
So the other one is what I've been working with on 15 Plymouth Highway. And that one I took to the planning or to the city council last week. And I don't know if you heard about that. So what that was they bought the property thinking if they could rebuild that residence. It's zoned commercial, and the residence burned down in 2019. And according to our zoning code, it was an existing non-conforming use. Residential is not allowed in the commercial, so it's an existing non-conforming use. And if there's an act of God and it burns down, you have 3 years to rebuild it. So, but in this case, there were extenuating circumstances, and the city council approved an extension so that they can rebuild, but they would still like the city to consider a different zoning on that. Like the commercial transition that's behind them. So that would require a rezone, the city to also rezone and redesignate that. So I want to put that in the hopper as well and then go. Because if there's others, I need to hear about it.
This-
Yeah.
This seems to be the way things go. I mean, one thing comes up and then you look at it and you see it has a potential all over the place. I've found, I think it's 20, but it's at least 20 lots that fall into the same problem that Patty and Pete have. And it's all the C1, C2. I can't do much with this map. I wish I had something big, but
Which map are you looking at? I want to make
right
sure.
now I have this, but this doesn't have the lot line. It's
doesn't.
just the biggest one to kind of
Yeah.
point at.
Janice, do you have the original back? 'Cause I
I
don't
can,
have it.
I can point at the lot lines and tell you,
These two? Oh, yeah.
From the one you printed out. I can pull it up on my computer, but
I have 20 different residences that have always been just that. Or maybe, somebody had a real estate officer also, i.e. Roland down here, or, some minor thing, but they're contiguous. They've always been residential. And now they're C1 and C2. And they could very easily just move the lines a little bit. I say easily, and put in the commercial transition, where of course you can have both. You can still have your residential or commercial if you want. When I first, Patty gave me a call and I was looking into it. I was down here, talked to Kenny Mackey about it because that place was briefly used as kind of an emergency ambulance place, which Kenny was going to be here and he'll tell you that still has to be residential use because they stay there. But as I'm leaving, Dan Epperson happened to be there, who was on the city council when all this stuff was changed. And I, showed him what the issue was, and he said, that's not what we intended to do. We intended to give people more leeway on what they do with their property, not less. But we had I'm not going to go into personal stuff, but it's part of the thing. We had a city planner at that time, and we're talking about like 2006, 2007, when the economy was booming, before 2008. He was from Elk Grove, and really he had a vision of Ione being the next, big booming commercial Elk Grove. And some of the things we have found out later, he colored in the map that didn't match the description of what was actually done. For the church, that's now a house, that was one. But he put a whole bunch of things into the C1, C2 that there's issues. They've always been residences, and they're all along this way here. There's actually the first two in front of Patty. Well, one's a dentist's office now, but the one before that is a house and always has been. But along these two blocks here, Boring's house, Terhune's house even, over there, the nice old Victorian, that's all, it's commercial.
So,
Did anything happen?
Is it commercial or commercial
I
transition
think
on?
It's C1 and
General.
C2.
Okay,
That's what I'm talking about. And if we could stick that whole bunch that are currently and always have been residences into
So-
commercial transition, instead of C1, C2, we would solve a whole lot of problems.
so can you show me on this zoning map that you have, the 2018 one? Like, just give me an example of one parcel.
Okay, well, let's see. Can I show you on this little thing that actually
Yep,
has?
that's what I'm looking for. So I understand what you're saying. I just want to
Yeah.
see which, because you guys have the history and know where everyone's.
Put a warm on the glass. So here's Main Street. We would draw like here, this one's always been a residence.
Okay,
This has always been a residence. Across the street, the first three have always been residents. Across the street, this whole section here,
mhm.
except for the very corner. So you got, Nevin's old house there.
Okay, okay.
And.
Now I see what you're talking about.
Okay.
That's,
Market Street going this way.
And all,
Mhm.
all these along here, except for the fire station. It's
Okay.
all that and this little section here.
so let me, so, no, that's okay. I've got a picture now. So,
It's nice because you can zoom in and zoom out.
yeah, that's the one I used to. I'm not ignoring you. I want to get to our municipal codes here.
But like one of the kind of things that struck me, at least one of the members of the city council who was on the city council at the time these changes were made, said this was not their intent.
Can I make a couple of comments? Just because I know Mark knows what's going on, and I know Amber, you probably don't know the whole story. And Michael, you probably don't know the whole story. My name's Patty Fisher Mizuraka. I live just outside of town on Mount Echo Drive. But Pete and I bought that place in July of this past year. But what has come up about it being commercial? Because if you come down Plymouth Highway, you're coming down Plymouth Highway, the one side that I'm on, that we bought 15 Plymouth Highway, there are 2 homes there that are commercial, straight commercial. Me, then the dentist office, which was a house in 1983 because it burnt homecoming of 83, and I remember it because I was just I was in college. So, and then Cal Burris's place, which is right next to the trading post. That's commercial. But if you go across the street, they're transitional. Mr. and Mrs. Smiley's, which they've had a trophy shop, and the gentleman next door to her and Mrs. Smiley's, I should say, is transitional. But what came up is when we bought this, and it's from a lending standpoint and insurance standpoint. So like Susan said, let's just say we build another house there. We've got the approval to build another house. We sell it because we're going to flip it. And if it burns again, God forbid, it won't burn again, but God forbid, they have 3 years to build it according to the code. They have 3 years to build. However, when it comes to a lending standpoint and even insurance, homeowners insurance, they get weird. And homeowners insurance is getting even weirder in the state of California, talking to insurance companies. So when you have a lot that is considered commercial, from a lending and insurance standpoint, for a new couple moving in, it can be problematic. And that's where we're coming from, is we just would like it to be transitional. So if somebody wants to run a barber shop out of their garage, they can do so, rather than it just being strictly commercial, so that it doesn't become an issue. Because when Pete and I bought it, there was nothing at the county that says it was a commercial lot. 78 years it's been an R1, according to the county, but cities trump the county. So that's why we're here, just so we can get things moving and hopefully get this switched to where it's transitional. And again, if it helps somebody else with another property here in town, especially like Cal Terhune's place and properties over there, I get it, but
They're clear down to Lane Paquette's, still commercial.
it can be a problem. I know right now they're having big time issues with homeowners insurance, because if your house is listed in your trust and your homeowners insurance is listed in your name, they don't want to pay because they don't match. So years ago, it wouldn't have been an issue that it was a commercial lot. Now, everybody doesn't want to pay. They don't want to loan money. They're getting sticky on everything, or the price goes up, right? So that's why we'd like to see this get switched, just so it's easier all the way around.
Well, I talked to Christy Roots yesterday, asked her about this whole thing, kind of the insurance aspect. And also there, you insure your house generally for replacement value.
Right,
But
right.
if you can't replace your house, it has to be something else. She said, yeah, it gets sticky.
It gets sticky. Yeah, yeah.
What I wanted to bring up tonight and see what you have to say, because I really don't know. It takes a while to get a zoning change. I know that. You have to go through all the steps, notifications, everything. I was just wondering if you have any suggestions to help them
Well-
along at this point?
So that's why I
I'd
took
like
it.
excuse me, I'd like to weigh in on this insurance thing, because I
Yeah,
have a little experience
you are.
the last 6 months, okay?
Oh, that's right.
You're absolutely right about we have everything that we own is in our trust. Everything, cars, hot rods, everything, okay? That's right. But the bottom line is, and I'd argue this till midnight, who's writing the insurance, okay? And what insurance company it is, okay? And not to be, giving anybody, any commercial time or anything, but Mercury Insurance, we just went through, we had a fire. And what do you have, 6 months we were out of our home? And Mercury Insurance and Manisero Insurance Company wrote our policy to where it was bulletproof. I mean, so
That's good to hear.
you need, yes, you need those two items. You need a good company and you need somebody that knows. I told Robert, I said, Robert, I want you to write this as if it was your own. And I can't even start to tell you what the things that they're doing for us and have done. So with that being said, as far as the commercial, one of the questions I have, you said about this 3-year thing. Okay, was that disclosed?
Well, and part of it is they were in litigation for over 4 years.
Yeah.
One neighbor was suing the other neighbor,
Uh-huh.
and it didn't get settled until July when we bought it.
No, that's, well, that's.
And the city didn't follow through with any lien, they didn't follow through with any of it to get them to rebuild. But all that happened was Kenny said, mow the grass so it isn't a fire hazard.
Uh-huh.
So that was part of it also, but I think it was more the litigation side as far as.
The people, if I correct, the people that owned it when it burned had no insurance.
They had to,
That was an issue. So that delayed things.
That would present litigation, yeah.
so obviously it was free and clear and,
Well, I
Oh,
think it
but
took-
he ends up
Yeah,
with
no.
nothing. He ends up with a lot with a burnt house, no assets. So he sues the neighbor, blaming it on them, and then back and forth. That lasted a while, but
Hmm.
anyway.
So you asked what we can do now, and that's why I took it to the city council last week, was to allow them an exception from the 3-year rule so they can submit their building permit and move forward with building their residence that they want to build. And in the meantime, we're going through this
Mhm.
exercise we're starting tonight, which is, let's take another look at our zoning. What makes sense for this property and other properties that are residential in a commercial area? So they can submit a building permit. They can move forward as they wish right now. And I understand that there's difficulties with lenders and there's difficulty with insurance companies. And I stated at the city council, and I'll state it again, I'm happy to write letters. I've done lots and lots of them in my career to insurance companies and lenders saying you can't withhold because it's expressly allowed in the non-conforming zone ordinance requirements that they can rebuild. So, and that they can be allowed to continue that residential use. So
So even
that's
though-
what we've done to allow them to move forward. But in the meantime, and while they are moving forward, I understand that the underlying zoning is still an issue, and not just for them, but other areas in the city. And that's what I want to start tackling tonight, get direction from the Planning Commission on how to proceed. So this is, as you pointed out, a bigger issue because the zoning, the downtown commercial zoning that you're seeing, which is that medium pink color. I can't stand the colors here because they're too close. Yeah, it's like the 2 yellows that are too close and the pinks that are too close to the red, and yeah, whatever. But they're, it's that medium pink color on your map does not allow for single family or even duplex. It does allow for multifamily in that zone. But this, and I'm not sure why that was recommended for this area, because a lot of times our downtown, our historic downtowns were commercial on the lower floors and residential upstairs. And that's not considered multifamily residential. Some of those were not standalone single-family residents, but they were just one unit.
Yeah.
So I can see the need to I think we can do this a couple different ways. We can either do a change to the descriptions that we have for each of these zones, leave the zones as they are, but allow for mixed use.
Different
That
language.
might be the
Yeah,
easiest.
that's,
I
yeah.
wanted to do more mixed use in the downtown. I'm a fan of that. I think it would be
Yeah.
kind of a one size fits a lot.
Yeah.
With that.
And that's what I've done in other jurisdictions as well. Is to allow that, like if you have, and I'm gonna say the state, Housing and Community Development likes that. That's actually, will give us some brownie points with the state because they like to see where you're allowing residential in more zones.
Yeah.
So if we're allowing for for that residential, mixed-use residential it's already allowed in the commercial transition. But if we can add it to the C1 light commercial and the C2 central business district, and then make possibly the C3 heavy commercial, allow it with a conditional use permit, I think that would somewhat take care of the issues, and I can do an analysis on how that would impact existing uses, and make sure that it would be compatible with those existing uses.
That sounds like a great suggestion.
And then, so for the 15 Plymouth Highway property, then that one is full commercial. You could even just leave it that way and issue a conditional use permit, or change that whole kind of area
Has the owner weighed in on that?
to, I believe that you're looking more of the transitional. Yeah. What I said to the city council is there's a reason why we want those to be left somewhat commercial. The neighboring property is using it for commercial
It is.
purposes. And the city should protect their commercial, because that's,
Right.
unfortunately, we like to not make planning decisions based on the bottom line. But the bottom line is that we get sales tax from commercial. And when you have highway frontage, ideally you would like that's accessible, and you want to kind of protect that for potential future use. So I think that area though would be a natural to switch it to. I'd have to look at it, but either way, we could do it with putting in a CUP into that, or put them into that commercial transition zone, which is what they're requesting.
Yeah, before, when I built my house in 1980, I was on commercial property. Commercial property, you could build a residence on. That's the
Yeah.
way it was written in this county, this city for 40 years. And why can't they write that in a commercial?
I think that's what she said.
That's what I'm saying is that
Change the language.
it was changed,
Basically-
and I'm proposing that we turn back time a little bit.
Rebecca, was simply undo what Christopher Jordan did. I think that's really all we're looking at. Yeah.
They says, show me your house plan.
Yeah.
Lot plan, that's all.
Well, and then our property, I don't know if the two of you, I know Mark lives across the street, so I've been in his ear for months on this whole thing. And our property part of it is on the property. A lot of these homes are built straight to everybody's house, right against each other. When the Dennis, that home burnt in '83, they went back and built it right onto the fence line. So they had more parking.
Parking.
front.
Yeah.
Joy, I can't think what her last name is, that was there with Cal Burris at next to the house to the left of it, right there, on near the trading post. She has 0 parking at all, but she's commercial like we are. And it's a home. But she did run a massage business out of there for a while, did she not?
Yeah.
Yeah, but she had no parking. We do have some area there for parking, but we do not have the ability to move that building back to the to the zero lot line, basically.
Okay.
So, because we were joking, you two didn't hear my joke the other night, but if we do have, if we're forced to build, we're gonna put a strip club there.
Gary wants. to
Gary,
be the-
Gary Thomas is in favor of that. Let's put that on the record.
Yes,
That's the first one.
but it's not what we want. We want a
Yeah.
neat little house there.
Right.
So, their property is zoned, currently zoned C, gosh, the colors are so hard to tell. It is zoned C1, which is light commercial. So if we did a wholesale change, which would help with the other residences that are along Jackson and Maine, to allowing that mixed use, then they shouldn't have any issues then.
That's easier than changing the whole zoning.
I agree.
No, that's
I
That's
agree.
a good idea. I hadn't thought of that.
So,
Going out of town, so.
yeah, so no, what I'm proposing is to change the description for that zone to allow for residential, because theirs isn't the only property that's in this boat. There are several others that are in this boat. And I think that, like I said, historically, we've always, these little cities have always allowed for mixed use. So, all right.
I like it.
So I will proceed with the Reed property, probably going to that C2 or the C1, which would allow for school and commercial, but also if we make those updates, if they wanted to put a residence there, they could. The Plymouth Highway property, keep it C1, but work on changing that list. And I think I'm not going to mess with the bottom lot, just leave it that commercial transition, but update the zoning map to reflect the general plan change that the city council approved so that they're consistent. And that I will bring all back to you hopefully next month, but it's going to take me a little bit to pull together and the list of what needs, how this is going to impact the city and what level of environmental review would need to be done for it. So it might take me a little bit more than 4 weeks to do that. So,
And just to confirm, what we're doing is we want to add the residential to C1 and C2. The C3 would be allowed with a use permit is what?
correct.
Okay.
But before we that's the direction to staff to start looking at.
Yeah.
There may be an issue with that C3
Yeah.
that I want to make sure we're not creating another issue.
Something
So,
in-
but I will look into that.
Is there a C3 heavy commercial? I mean, is there something written that says what is and isn't?
Yeah, and I apologize. I probably should have given you the table. If you go to the city's website and click on municipal code and go to section 1724-030, that's the allowed land uses and permit requirements. So, and that gives you for each zone, what is allowed and what's not allowed. So, and I apologize, I should have, again, brought this to you tonight so you had that in front of you. But when we go forward with this process, I will make sure you have this table in front of you as well. Okay. I have my marching orders.
Okay.
Any
In
other?
the meantime, they can do their permit and bill. Right?
Yeah, the city council did grant their extension on that 3-year.
All we can do for now.
Yep.
Go ahead.
If
Mary.
you're done, public comment, please.
Well, this is still part of the workshop.
Okay.
We're still
Um,
within the, yeah.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
I had the residents on the corner of Market and Mill Street for years, and the front was residential and the back 33 1/3 by 100 was actually commercial. But it was always the understanding that it could be built into residential, because somewhere behind me, the city council came and they made from Market Street all the way over commercial. And I think that's what you're seeing on your map.
Yeah,
So,
that downtown.
what I was always told, I was a planner, was on the planning commission like you guys were from like 93 to 96. And then as city council, I dealt with it a lot myself. So, but we were always telling people about getting insurance, or like you said, like it was already stated, or getting a loan to rebuild, because we had an individual come in and they couldn't get, so I had to sign a letter. Do you remember that, Janice? And we had to sign a letter saying that the best use was residential, so they could get a loan and get going with their, but otherwise we're just screwing everybody up from being able to build this house. This town would look like a ghetto if we put all those obstacles and stuff in front of everybody. So I'm glad to see that you guys are tackling it, not for these two people, but Susan, how's your cats?
They're doing great. Thanks for asking.
You know, to touch on that though, the lending world isn't the same. It's not, I mean, it's not, I mean, in the early 70s, you know, I'm 22 years old and I went to a lender and got financed to build a fourplex in Campbell at 21 years old and working as a mechanic. Things, you know, things are different now. You know,
I signed that paper when I was a mayor, so that was around 2004. So that people could get a loan and get going.
The biggest thing with me is like on title, is they seem like they only go to the county. And there should be some type of check and balance where the city, since they're the one in charge, should be telling the county.
No, the county, when a lender or insurance or anybody calls the county, they should be referring them to us.
To the city.
Because it's our, and not tell them, not pull up the assessor information and put the use code because that's not our zoning.
No.
You know what I mean? I mean,
I know exactly what you mean. Yeah, that's on title. They didn't, that's a mistake on title's part. If it's in the city's jurisdiction, you find out from the city planner or the city clerk what your zoning and general plan designation is. They absolutely should.
Yeah.
I
I
wonder how often that happened, they'd stop.
all the time, if I had a nickel for every time, I'd be very rich. Trust me,
Yeah.
I get it all the time. Well, the county said da-da-da. Well, the county needs to, and if you called the county planning department, they're really good. But some other departments don't always refer them to the cities. So, all right, I have my marching orders. So thank you for humoring me with this and bringing up the other issue. That was good. I appreciate it.
And if you do what you suggested, it covers the whole thing.
Yeah.
It
Yep.
does. Yeah.
Sometimes I have a good idea every once in a while.
This one.
So any other comments? Well, we still have our workshop open. Anything else? Any comments on Zoom, Janet? No? Okay. In that case, then yes, you have marching orders and we can go ahead and we'll move on to the housing element, annual progress report.
Right. So I brought the annual progress report to the Planning Commission and the City Council last year. This report is due by a local jurisdiction every year to submit to Housing and Community Development. It's due April 1st of every year. And basically what it is a big, giant, ugly table that we have to fill out that all the crux information that they want is how much new housing you've built So I've included, instead of the big table that I tried to give you guys last year, I included the nice, lovely table that Jordan did for me that gives you where all the new building was. And not just that, but also which were completed or not completed in the date of occupancy, because that's information that HCD wants. And what they're trying to do is to demonstrate, are you meeting your regional housing needs assessment numbers? And are you doing it in a streamlined fashion? Because time costs money to developers and to home builders. So they want to make sure that we are moving quickly, these homes through the building process, and we're not being a constraint. So that's that part of the housing report. The other part that they want to see is your compliance with the programs that are in the housing element. And that's the 33 pages of table that I gave you. I want to give you the highlights of what we did. So last year was the first year of the 6th cycle housing element coming into being. It was actually not certified until last month.
Saw that just in February.
Yeah. So we submitted it after you all approved it,
Right.
you being the planning commission and the city council. And then HCD kicked it back to all the jurisdictions because we're doing a collaborative housing element with all 5 cities and the county. They kicked it back to everybody. And it was for some minor edits. The consultant was rehired by the county. Thankfully, they still had some grant monies left and rehired her to make those changes. And then we resubmitted, and there was an issue on their end with the submittal. And it took me quite a bit to argue with them that we had it submitted on a timely manner. And they finally did get us our compliance letter. So this is our second year looking at these programs. Obviously, last year it was freshly adopted. We hadn't really done anything because it was
Right.
brand new. So in the year period, essentially what we got done was we established the countywide housing working group, and we held 3 meetings, and we addressed some issues with ADUs, and got some information from the county that I need to incorporate the city's information and get on our website. So that's in the works. We're working on the water efficiency landscape ordinance, which the city actually has, that's in compliance with the state. But that's, it's not being implemented. Let's put it that way. The water agency goes like this, you guys have to implement it, and we go, no, you have to implement it. The bottom line is that we have to implement it. So we're working together on getting a countywide ordinance for everybody to adopt that's consistent, so it's not confusing to people. And that's considered yet another constraint to development if somebody can't understand it or it's not affordable to go through that process. And then we worked with the Amador Water Agency, who's updating their master plan on the growth projections. Typically, the master plan uses the city's general plan to determine how much capacity we need to build into our new systems. The general plan for Ione considers a massive amount of growth. Very, very large. And to accommodate all that growth would be a lot of improvements to the plant here. And Ione was probably the biggest, but there were some issues in Plymouth and Sutter Creek as well. So the group worked together, all the entities, the cities and everything, and came up with a little bit more realistic growth projection. And that's been given to the water agency to use for the master plan update. Again, capacity is a constraint to growth, and they want us to housing, affordable housing. So they want to see those issues taken away. So we're continuing to work on that. The housing group met again yesterday and went over and it's policy 15A, I think, in here, talking about smoke-free multifamily housing. So we met with the public health department officer, and we'll be working on an ordinance to, again, a countywide ordinance, so it's efficient. We're not all trying to reinvent the wheel and come up with something to deal with that. So that's the purpose of that group, is to go through all these policies and see if we can collaborate so that we can get something through that makes sense for everybody and that it's consistent throughout the county. So that's what we've been working on, and the table was presented in tonight's packet reflects that. There's a lot that still needs to be done, and we will do that work as budget and staff availability allows. I will say that there are some other changes along with what we talked about in the last item, updates to the zoning ordinance. I'm trying to be efficient and roll everything into one. There's some mandated changes that need to be made to the zoning. And I have already done a presentation list on what that is when we adopted the zoning ordinance. And we're going to start working on that now. So any questions or comments on the materials provided?
I read just the other morning about the smoke-free thing,
Yeah,
and it's so abstract.
I know.
It's unbelievable. But so these people, what kind of smoke?
Second and third hand smoke. Do you know what third hand smoke is?
Cigarettes?
Seriously,
Yeah.
it's,
And what about barbecue? Because they.
yeah, no. They're talking about tobacco.
Okay.
It is
Tobacco,
defined,
okay.
second hand and third hand smoke is defined as tobacco or tobacco related, marijuana. Yeah, that's in there too. And so third hand smoke is the toxins that are left in the carpets, the drapes, the ceiling tiles, that just don't ever come out really. So that's considered third hand smoke. So if somebody rents an apartment, they smoke in that apartment and they leave, and then a family comes in that's smoke free, even though it's not secondhand smoke, there's third hand smoke exposure. That's what that's about. That's exactly the issue, is enforcement, is how do you, even if you come up with an ordinance, how do you enforce it? So we need to come up with something that's reasonable and that doesn't put enforcement necessarily on the cities, burden the cities with that, because it's not realistic.
Boy, what a time to be an attorney.
I know.
Man. Oh, God. A
So
ball.
anyway, any other questions on this table?
No, I appreciate seeing the progress on it. I know when it was first presented, it was just this, kind of blank task list. And so, I appreciate that, there are those steps, and I did, that one caught my eye too, as you were mentioning it. And no, it's really true. There does need to be some, some responsibility for that, but certainly where it goes.
It's just hard to put it on.
Yeah, a county-wide ordinance that, literally a one size fits all in that respect. So,
Yeah. So the objective tonight was just to review it, take any public comment on this, and direct staff to send it on to the city council. If there's any amendments, we can make any amendments. But the city council will hear this next week at their meeting, and then I can get it filed with HCD by the April 1st deadline.
yeah, it sounds good. Sounds good to me. Larry, do you have?
Comment?
Yes.
I'd like to know about the homeless. I see that's in 27. We're gonna build 3 houses here. Who's gonna pay for the taxes? Who's gonna pay for the water? Who's gonna pay for the upkeep of the house?
So we are not required to build, the city is not required to build any of these homes.
Yeah, but
We are required to reduce the constraints, remove any constraints, and do any kind of incentives that we can afford to do. So some of the bigger cities out there can waive fees or
if I remember
What I
right,
don't
not to interrupt.
understand, it says here, three beds provided a piece in Ione. Now, what's that mean in 27? That's when this takes effect.
But that's, first of all, it says beds, not houses.
Right.
Yeah, beds, where are you
So
gonna get the
we can
beds?
only
Who's gonna
in-
pay for this?
We can only
Here's what I'm
encourage
getting at.
it.
Who's gonna maintain this building? You gotta have a building to put it in.
Yeah, we can only encourage it. We don't have a requirement to build it, but we want to encourage somebody to put in some type of unit that allows for that to happen. So there are rehabilitative companies out there, and there's also like ATCA is very active in the county with building or providing transitional shelters. They provide homeless shelters, they provide transitional houses and rehabilitative facilities. And
That
then
means
in
we
Sutter
pay for it.
Creek, they have the Danco project, which is another, which would satisfy this. That's a big development that the county received grant funds for and then are citing it in Sutter Creek.
If I remember right, okay, because I started off sitting here and then I went over, was next to Mark at the very end. And I questioned, like Larry, and if I remember right, now you just said a key thing. If it can be afforded.
Yeah.
Now, is that true? I mean,
Absolutely,
if it,
yeah.
if there's no budget to house homeless,
It's not even that. We aren't on the hook to build or provide anything. We just have to take the constraints away. And if somebody comes in and says, I want to do this, we have
you
to
have to let them.
let them.
Okay.
If an
But-
agency or an entity
but-
wants to
Yes.
But do
use
we,
that.
do we have to let them without restraints and mandates and what have you? Or do we have, is there something?
They basically are saying you have to,
Well, let me just give them an example. If we let somebody do it and a few blocks over, they got a house and they're gonna do this. Okay, can the city require them to have two police officers in the front yard 24/7
no,
and then pay for it?
no. That's considered discriminatory. So a residence is a residence. It doesn't matter if you're housing somebody with a drug and alcohol addiction or elderly in need of assistance or young families. You can't discriminate about the type of housing, who is going to live in that housing.
No,
It's
no, I
not
didn't- no, I didn't
discriminatory.
say, I'm saying, could the city require them
No.
to do things?
No, what they're saying is that you have to allow for these types of facilities to go into a residential with up to a certain number of beds ministerially, not discretionary. It can't go to the planning commission. It can't go to the city council.
And Larry, as long as I let Rick Eisert sleep in his shop, we only have to find two more.
To obey the law.
State of rebuilding.
They have to obey the law.
Absolutely have to obey the law.
I understand that, but I mean, has this been tested in the Supreme Court? I mean.
I don't know if it's
You know-
been tested at the Supreme Court. I do know that, like, for example, in Jackson, we had two adult care facilities come in and on the same street, and the neighbors were really upset about it, but up to, I think they can do up to 12 beds, no, 6 beds per house. We couldn't say no. And then there was another one on North Main Street that was a rehabilitation facility, and they could go up to 12 beds because of their zoning and the size of their building. And there again, we could review the building to make sure it was safe for that occupancy load and that there was ingress and egress that was okay. But other than that, it did not go to the planning commission or the city council. The state says, no, you have to allow those because otherwise it's considered discriminatory. Actually, yes. So if you're going to be a state regulated adult care, daycare, because daycare is another one that's in-house. You know, you can allow residential daycare facilities, rehabilitative or transitional housing, supportive housing, those all fall under the state regulations. So the state has guidelines, what can and can't be done there and the amount of, so like a daycare, you have to have a certain amount of outdoor play space per child, for example. So, and then for rehab care, yes, you have to have separation for gender, you have to have certain number of restrooms, exact,
Next door to their house.
yeah. Yeah. So, but no, we do not have to build them. We just have to allow them to happen within the guidelines that the state says. You're welcome.
That explains it.
Yep. The worst one that I experienced was in Jackson, and it was the methadone clinic.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's zoned light commercial and it allowed for medical facilities. And they wanted to put a methadone clinic in, which typically they do have problems. But again, you can't discriminate if it's a breast cancer facility or a methadone clinic. It doesn't, you can't discriminate. You deal with it. I mean, I understand. I don't make the laws. I just have to implement them. I don't always agree with them either. So.
I wonder
All
who's writing the insurance on those structures.
So that's all I had on this. And if with the planning commission's approval, I will forward it to the city council and we'll get this thing submitted to the state.
Yeah, I don't think we have any apprehension about that,
Yeah.
so.
Direction to staff is
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. Yeah, no, we'll proceed with the progress report and yeah, that sounds good. Do we
Okay.
have any further planning commissioner reports or anything to
Nope.
add?
Any chatter of developers coming our way
Well,
besides?
we are
School Road?
processing the Ringer Ranch and Waterman Ranch applications. Their applications were deemed incomplete until while they are doing environmental. And I've been working with them and Caltrans on what Caltrans is going to want to see. And so we can address the traffic impacts.
With that,
So-
with that being said, and I'm still on this and I won't give up on it. To my fellow commissioners here, is it time that we start mandating requirements for developers?
We do.
Huh?
We do. That's something that,
No, we haven't. No, I mean, I've been through the nightmare with Riverland. And you know, they never paid their fair share.
You inherited some stuff that was approved a long time ago, if I
I
remember right, and
You know,
I think we've been doing a little better since then, I hope.
I think we need to bring this up and we need to have some rules and regulations
Yeah.
that they can't get out of.
So I'll say I'm well aware of the deficiencies in some of the last development and the lack of bulletproof conditions of approval and mitigation measures. I'm well aware of those. Let me just, that's what makes them bulletproof, is if you can enforce them. And if you can't, then you don't allow that development.
right,
So-
and to, I think what you're saying, Commissioner Politi, is that the time to do that is during the negotiation process.
But
It's
see,
not in
that-
after the fact, and
that-
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
That-
it's,
And I agree with that, except when it depends on the people or the person that's doing the negotiations. And the track record, I'll give you an example, perfect example. Did we ever, the gated community that Riverland put in over there, okay? Did we ever vote on that? Was that ever brought up to? We voted on that gated community?
No.
Not while I was on the council.
Probably
Or
before
convention.
you
Yeah.
joined. Yeah, before you joined. That
And-
was,
So they got what? 21% more for those houses than they did on my track in Shakely, because it's a gated community. What did we get out of it? Nada. That's what I'm saying.
so,
You know,
If
we
it's
need,
on the other side of that, Michael, and there was a gated community. I don't remember the letter or number, whatever, but they wanted out of the gated community thing, which they allowed them.
right.
And,
Right.
you know, we all
Kids were not-
understood, once it's not a gated community, the city has to maintain the streets. If it's gated, they have to maintain their own streets.
well, the gating doesn't necessarily dictate that. It's whether the streets were offered in dedication and accepted by the city. And it can be a gated community and still be accepted by the city. So,
Stand correct.
so, you know, what I have to offer is that you have a different planning team and you have a different engineering team. And we're well aware of some of the deficiencies. Your existing staff who's been through this has heard it all and they've shared it with me. And we will be bringing what I hope will be some, some projects with recommendations from staff on some pretty tight conditions of approval and mitigation measures. And that's the time for you all to weigh in on it. So,
these things, again, negotiations, and I totally understand that, but, you know, to
well, really,
be-
there's no
to be
negotiation.
forthcoming,
It's
to-
the city staff saying,
Enforcing
to
it.
be.
here's what you need to adhere to, our standards, our ordinances.
Exactly,
our
but
rules.
they have to be written down and they have to be forthcoming to the developer. Say, don't even talk to us unless if you got $50 million to improve our sewer treatment plant. Don't even come to us.
Yeah.
You know, and those are the kind of things, if you don't play hardball with them, we're gonna get rolled over. And, you know, I won't see it. I'm 75 years old. I won't see it, but 35 years.
Didn't build a school. You go
Yeah,
to
yeah.
Folsom, you go to Trout
Yeah.
Grove, 750, they build a new school.
Yeah.
Before they build one house.
You know, that's- They negotiated that with Riverland, and what happened? Riverland came to the city council, oh, well, you know, we can't do it, and, oh, okay, that's all right. But if it's mandated, then they can't come back and do that. You know?
We have a lot of examples of poorly done mitigation. And, on that respect, we have a new District 2 supervisor as well that has extensive experience with our city. And I think we have a real chance at some good advocacy. So, let's see what, Well,
So on an unrelated but
it's not
somewhat
quite that.
related topic, I will be bringing back, apparently we have 2 new potential planning commissioners coming on board.
Actually, I talked to both of them and they both declined.
Okay,
So we will be advertising for the 2 vacancies.
okay. What's the timeline on that?
We hope to get them by the next planning commission.
Okay, great. Okay.
That's our goal.
Because I would like to
yeah.
put on the agenda, going over this, because like you didn't all know that this existed. So we need to go over general plan, we need to go over our zoning code. go over CEQA requirements, just do some planning 101 when we have new planning commissioners on here. And it's a good refresher for the existing planning commissioners, and then an update on what projects are going to be coming up, which is why understanding all of this is so important. So that will be on the agenda. If I don't have anything else, I will definitely have that. So
I like it.
Have, the hunt. CUP
yes, I'm hoping to have the Hunt CUP on there as well,
and the DeVore.
and DeVore. Tentative parcel map. Yeah, I got a lot to do.
I know, sorry.
It's okay.
Actually, speaking of that, it just reminded me of it. We were talking about it with the mapping earlier. So there were 2 lots, right, that have been purchased by the city downtown that are going to be transitioned into parking spaces. Is that? Okay,
Well,
yeah,
there's 2 lots we purchased.
okay, yeah.
The plan was to make them parking lots.
Parking lots, okay. So I just was wondering if there was any kind of since it's been like, I don't know, 9 months since we met last for planning, if there was any kind of like a state of those kind of matters. I know we've probably, and I know, Mark, you have to get going too, but we've all been following the press release updates from the city about what's happening with those negotiations with Mr. Lee and at the golf course. And so, I just was wondering if there's any kind of, status updates or anything that can be provided for those attending.
I'm in my planning box.
Yeah,
If
yeah.
it's outside of my planning box, I don't necessarily hear about it. If I do hear about it, I will let you know. But, I'm kind of kept in my box.
No, it reminded me of it as we had this format tonight with the workshop and talking about kind of some planning 101 and just some of these, things coming down the pike and
Right.
just, wanting to make sure that we continue to have those discussions. So.
Yeah,
okay.
absolutely.
That sounds good.
If I have information, I'm always willing to share.
No, I appreciate it. Okay. And with that, looking forward to our next meeting. Thank you. Meeting is adjourned. Thanks, Patty. No, that's a good solution. I like that for this.
No. I understand completely. You have a right to get frustrated with things. I have to say, there's guys are always here. And I go to other jurisdictions and a lot of the planning commission meetings, there's no one. It's nobody's watching. Nobody's paying attention. And that's,
I have to agree. I think it's great that you agree with me on that phase stuff. That is the biggest joke.
no, I think, I will always pay attention to what other jurisdictions are doing and the potential impacts.
What Council Oaks did. This horse trough was built it all at one time and then all of a sudden
Yeah.
cut it down in phases. That way they can chop it up.
Yes,
That's why they're
I
doing
don't know
it.
who's splitting it, but that's what they're doing.
Yeah, but I don't think that they were gonna sell it.
All right.
Oh, that's good. So they'll each have a piece.
Yeah. It's hard to get a home stuff on that house.
Go over their heads. And that is where the problem starts. If you've never done this, you don't know how to do it, you're gonna get taken advantage of like crazy.
And that's why, like, I will be there.